Welcome back to ClearPath Conversations, where customer journeys find direction. I'm Mark Bernardin, and today we're talking about something that either happened to you yesterday or will happen tomorrow. I don't know, but it will happen. You've just got handed a portfolio. Maybe it's your first one. Maybe it's a new book after a reorg. Maybe you're inheriting accounts from someone who just left and you have exactly zero context on what you're walking into. Either way, you're staring at a spreadsheet. Maybe it has 15 accounts. Maybe it's 50. Maybe it's 120 names with ARR values, renewal dates, and nothing else. And your manager says, "Great, let me know if you have any questions." Then they walk away. And you're sitting there thinking, where do I even start? That's what we're covering today. How to prioritize your accounts when you're handed a portfolio with no segmentation, no documentation, and no time to figure it out on your own. This is episode 4 of ClearPath Conversations, part of our Fundamentals mini-series. And if you're new to the show or new to the role, this episode is going to give you a framework that you can use immediately. Not just theory, not buzzwords, just a real approach that I've used across multiple companies, multiple industries, and portfolios worth millions in ARR. So let's get into it. Here's the truth that nobody tells you when you get started in customer success. Your portfolio is not created equal. Some accounts will love you no matter what you do, and some accounts are going to churn no matter what you do. And some accounts, those ones in the middle, are where your job actually matters. But when you get your first book, you don't know what account is which. You don't know who's about to renew smoothly. You don't know who's been quiet for 6 months because they're happy or because they're already mentally checked out. You don't know who your internal team thinks is fine, but is actually sitting on a ticking time bomb. And here's the kicker. You can't treat every account the same. You don't have the time. You don't have the bandwidth. And if you try to give everyone equal attention, you'll burn out in 60 days and accomplish nothing. So the question becomes, how do you decide where to focus? That's what portfolio prioritization is all about. And it starts with understanding something really fundamental. Not all revenue is equal, and not all relationships are equal, and not all risk is visible. Your job as a CSM is to figure out which accounts need you most, which accounts can grow, and which accounts you need to stabilize before they blow up. That's the work. Now, let me walk you through how I do it. Step 1 is get the raw data in front of you. Before you can prioritize anything, you need to know what you're working with. Pull together everything that you can find. Account names and their ARRs, renewal dates, contract terms and their length, product usage data, if you have it, support ticket volume, NPS or their sentiment scores, if those exist. When was the last time they had a touch point? Any key stakeholder names? Now, if your company has a CS platform, something like Gainsight, Churn Zero, Plan Hat, whatever, great. Pull the data from there. If you don't, build a spreadsheet. I'm serious. A simple Google sheet with columns for those things: account name, ARR, renewal date, last contact, risk level. Everything will do more for you than waiting for a perfect system that doesn't yet exist. Most CSMs skip this step because it feels administrative. They want to jump straight into relationship building. Don't. You can't prioritize what you can't see. And trust me, you don't want to find out 3 weeks in that your biggest account renewed last month and nobody told you. Spend the first few days building your map. It's not glamorous, it's not sexy, but it's foundational. The next step is, once you have that, segment your portfolio. So once you have all that data, you need to set it up into groups. And I use a simple tiering model. You can call it whatever you want: T1, T2, T3, high, medium, low, strategic, standard, transactional, whatever. The labels really don't matter. What matters is that you're grouping accounts based on a combination of factors. Things like ARR, typically higher value is higher priority, generally. Also, strategic importance. Things like, are they a reference customer? Is it a logo that your company cares about? Is it a potential expansion and growth opportunity? There are also considerations like the risk level. Is the customer or account struggling? Are they disengaged? Are they escalated? Things like that. Also, the relationship maturity. You need to consider whether they're a new customer versus whether they're a long-term partnership. Also, account complexity. Are there multiple stakeholders? Do they have multiple products in their environment? What is their enterprise deal structure? So here's how I typically tier my customers. So I have tier 1, call it strategic, high touch, whatever. These are your highest ARR accounts, your most strategic logos, or your highest risk accounts that need immediate attention. You're meeting with these customers regularly, monthly at a minimum, sometimes bi-weekly. You know their stakeholders. You have a relationship with their executive sponsor. You're running formal EPRs. These are the accounts where you cannot afford to be reactive. Then you have tier 2, your standard level, your medium touch. Solid ARR, healthy usage. They're not at risk, but they're also not on autopilot. You're checking in quarterly, maybe monthly, depending on what's going on with them. You're responsive when they reach out. You're keeping an eye on usage trends and sentiment. These accounts won't churn if you miss a call, but they won't expand if you're invisible. Then there's tier 3, the transactional level, the low touch. These are lower ARR, often self-sufficient, maybe a scale level, limited engagement needs. You're checking in maybe once a quarter or only when something changes, like a renewal coming up or a support escalation. You're not ignoring them, but you're also not scheduling monthly syncs. Your role here is to be available and not necessarily proactive. Now, here's where people get tripped up. They assume tiering is only about ARR. It's not. I've had tier 1 accounts that were mid-range in revenue, but they were red status, and if I didn't stabilize them quickly, they were going to churn, and publicly, and really damage the brand. I've also had high ARR accounts that were so healthy and so low maintenance that I could safely put them at tier 2 and really focus my energy elsewhere. So Tiering is strategic. It's not automatic, and it should sort of flex based on what's happening in the business at the time. Now, step 3 is to identify your red flags. So once your accounts are tiered, the next question is, where's the fire? You need to do a risk assessment across your entire book, and you need to do this quickly. Here's what I look for in the first 2 weeks or so. Things like no activity in the last 90 days or so. If there's been radio silence from a customer for about 3 months, that is not a good sign. Either they don't need you, which in some cases is fine, or they've disengaged, which is definitely not fine. You need to know which. There could be low or declining usage. So if you've got product adoption data, use it. If usage is trending down, that's a leading indicator for churn. It doesn't mean they're gone yet, but it means that you need to dig in. You could have high support ticket volume. Are they flooding support with issues? Are those issues getting resolved? Or are they getting band-aids while the underlying problem festers? This can be a red flag that often gets missed because support owns the queue, but you need to know. Now, support tickets can be misleading as well because support tickets mean that they are using the product. So take this with a grain of salt. Executive turnover is another indicator of a red flag. Did their CIO leave or their CISO? Did their VP of security move to another company? If your champion just left, your relationship just reset to 0. Don't find out about this 3 months later. Find out now. If you have a renewal in 90 days or less with no check-in, if they're renewing soon and nobody's talked to them recently, that's a big problem. You don't want your first conversation in 6 months to be, hey, just checking in on the renewal. That's not a relationship. That's a transaction. And last is any negative sentiment or escalation history. So if they've escalated in the past, or if there's a note in the system that says they're something like frustrated with the product, don't ignore that. It does not go away on its own. So your goal here is not to solve every problem on day one. Your goal is to know where the problems are, because once you know, you can plan. And planning beats panic every single time. And then step 4 is to build out your 30, 60, and 90-day plan. So, okay, you've got your data, you've segmented your accounts, you've identified your risk. Now you need a plan. Not a wish list, not a vague intention to, hey, I'm going to get to know my customers. A real plan with specific actions, specific accounts, and specific timelines. So here's how I structure mine. The first 30 days, I reach out to every tier 1 account. I introduce myself, I schedule a call, ask them how things are going, listen more than I talk. You'll want to identify and document your top 3 to 5 at-risk accounts, and then start building what I call a path to green for each one. And we're going to cover this path to green in detail in a future episode. Then review health scores and update them based on what you're learning. If the system says they're green, but your gut says red, trust your gut and flag it accordingly internally. And then schedule internal syncs with the sales, support, and product team to get context on your account so that you can't see everything in the data. So you want a 360 view from all of those teams. And then my 60-day plan is, so by now you should have had a meaningful conversation with every tier 1 and maybe even some of the tier 2 accounts by now. Your at-risk accounts should have active mitigation plans in flight. So that means documented actions, internal alignment, and customer-facing communications. Now start planning your EBRs for your top accounts. Even if they're months away, get the prep work started. Begin tracking expansion signals, things like usage growth, new stakeholders, feature requests that indicate that they're trying to do more. Now, for 90 days, you really should, at this point, feel pretty confident in your portfolio. You know who's stable, who's at risk, who's a growth opportunity. Your tiering by now should be locked in, though it can always adjust and should adjust. You should have at least one success story to tell, an account you stabilized, a relationship you built, a risk that you mitigated. You should also have a running list of process gaps, documentation needs, or internal friction points that are making your job harder. Don't just tolerate those, document them, and advocate for change. Look, I know this sounds like a lot, and it is, but here's the thing. If you don't build structure in the first 90 days, you're going to spend the next 6 months in reactive mode. And reactive mode is where CSMs burn out. Structure doesn't mean rigidity. It means clarity. It means you're working with intention instead of just putting out fires. Now, the next step is to communicate this plan internally. This is honestly the part that most CSMs skip. They do all the work, they prioritize the accounts, they build the plan, and then they keep it to themselves. Don't do that. Your manager needs to know what you're focusing on and why. Sales needs to know which accounts you're flagging at risk so they don't get blindsided. Support needs to know which accounts are escalated so they can route issues appropriately. Product needs to hear the feature requests and pain points that you're surfacing. I'm not saying you need to send a novel, but a simple status update, even a bulleted email, goes a long way. I've got a template that I use for this. It's simple, just a quick overview broken into sections. Your tier 1 accounts and their status, green, yellow, or red. Any accounts that are at risk and what you're doing about them. Expansion opportunities you're tracking, and any blockers that are slowing you down. The whole thing takes maybe 5 minutes to write, but it gives your manager visibility. It creates a paper trail, and it shows that you're thinking strategically. You can grab that exact template along with a portfolio prioritization worksheet and a 30, 60, 90-day planning guide in the companion download for this episode. Just head to clearpathcx.com and look for episode 4 resources. So that's it. That's the update. Short, clear, actionable. And it does 3 things. It shows your manager you're organized and strategic. It creates visibility for your leadership so they're not surprised later. And it documents your work, which it matters when review time comes around. So don't skip this step. Even if your manager doesn't ask for it, do it anyway. because when things go right, it's evidence that you had a plan. And when things go wrong, it's proof that you flagged it early. So let me tell you a story. When I joined Palo Alto Networks, I inherited a portfolio with zero documentation, no handoff notes, no stakeholder maps, no context, just a list of names and renewal dates. One of those accounts was Ernst & Young. Huge logo, high ARR, multi-year contract, and I had no idea where they stood. The previous CSM had left and moved to a different team suddenly. The account had been floating for weeks, and I was the fourth person they had worked with in about 18 months. Not exactly a trust building situation. So I did what I just walked you through. First, I pulled everything I could find: contract details, support ticket history, product usage, data, previous meeting notes, the few that I could find. I built a timeline of every interaction that I could document. Then I tiered the account: high ARR, strategic logo, multi-product footprint, and radio silence for 6 weeks. That is a tier 1 with yellow to red risk written all over it. I reached out within the first week, not with a sales pitch, not with an agenda, just a simple email. Hi, I'm Mark. I'm your new CSM. I'd love to learn more about how things are going and how I can support you moving forward. They responded within an hour. We scheduled a call for that Friday. On that call, I asked questions. I asked a lot of them. What's working? What's not? What did you expect when you first bought this? What are you actually using? Who else on your team should I know? What does success look like for you over the next 6 months? And then I listened. I didn't try to solve everything on the spot. I didn't overpromise. I took notes. I asked clarifying questions, and then I thanked them for their time. After that call, I built out a stakeholder map. I documented every name they mentioned, every role, every pain point, and every goal. I shared that map internally with the sales team, support, and my manager. I flagged the gaps, things like missing champions, unclear decision-making structure, misalignment on product expectations. And then I followed up with the customer. I sent a recap email. I outlined what I heard, what I understood their priorities to be, and what I was planning to do next. I asked them to correct me. Let me know if I got anything wrong. They responded again, this time with more detail and more trust. Within 30 days, I knew more about that account than anyone else on the team. Within 60 days, I was running strategic planning sessions with their CISO and their architecture team. Within 90 days, they were asking for me by name when they had questions, even before they opened a support ticket. Not because I was special, but because I was structured. And structure builds trust faster than charisma ever will. That account renewed, and it expanded, and it became one of the strongest relationships in my portfolio. Not because I got lucky, but because I prioritized it correctly from day one. And that's what prioritization does. It doesn't just help you manage your time. It helps you build trust, helps you mitigate risk, and create the conditions for success. Now, let me give you a few more tactical tips for managing a portfolio once you have it prioritized. First, use a weekly review ritual. So every Friday afternoon or Monday morning, whatever your style, block 30 minutes to review your portfolio. When I would do this, I would look at things like what happened this week with every tier 1 account, what's coming up this next week, what accounts haven't I touched in a while, what accounts are trending in the wrong direction, and what internal support do I need to request. This isn't busy work, it's pattern recognition, and it keeps me from being blindsided. Next, track your time. For the first month, keep just a simple log of where your time is actually going. You might think that you're spending 40% of your time on tier 1 accounts, but when you actually track it, you realize you're spending 60% of your time on tier 3 accounts because they email you the most. That's a prioritization problem, and you can't fix it if you don't see it. Next, don't confuse noise with risk. Some accounts are loud. They email constantly. They open tickets. They ask for meetings. That doesn't necessarily mean they're at risk. Sometimes it just means they're engaged. Other accounts are silent. No emails, no tickets, no meetings. That doesn't necessarily mean they're healthy. Sometimes it means they've checked out. Learn to distinguish between noise and signal, between engagement and dependency, between silence and satisfaction. That's part of the art of this job. Next, build relationships with sales and support early on. Your portfolio does not exist in a vacuum. Sales handed these accounts to you. They know the history. They know the promises that were made. They know the politics. Support is interacting with these accounts sometimes every day. They see the friction points. They hear the frustration. Don't wait until there's a problem to talk to these teams. Build those relationships proactively. Ask for context. Share what you're seeing. Create feedback loops. The best CSMs I know treat sales and support as strategic partners, not adversaries. Next, be honest about what you can and can't do. When you inherit a portfolio, especially a large one, you're not going to fix everything at once. You're not going to turn every red account green in 30 days. You're not going to have deep relationships with every customer by the end of the quarter. That's okay. What matters is that you're making progress, that you're working strategically, that you're communicating what you're doing and why. Don't pretend that everything's fine when it's not. Don't hide risk because you're worried that it reflects poorly on you. Flag it, document it, build a plan to address it. That's what good CSMs do. Next, remember, prioritization is not permanent. Your portfolio will change. Accounts are going to move from green to red. New accounts are going to come in. Old accounts are going to churn or expand. Your tiering from month 1 doesn't have to be your tiering in month 6. Revisit it regularly, quarterly if you have to. Adjust based on what you're learning. Be flexible, but always, always have a framework. Because a flexible framework is still better than no framework at all. Okay, I've thrown a lot at you. Let's bring this home. So, if you're staring at a new portfolio right now, or if you're about to, here's what I want you to do. First, get the data in front of you. Don't wait for a perfect system. Build a spreadsheet if you have to. Second, segment your accounts. Tier them based on things like ARR, risk, strategic value. Not all accounts are created equal. Third, identify your red flags. Where's the fire? Where's the opportunity? Where's the silence that's louder than it should be? Fourth, build out your 30, 60, 90-day plan. What are you doing in the next 30 days, the next 60, the next 90? Write it down. Make it specific. And fifth, communicate that plan internally. Don't keep your work invisible. Share your priorities with your manager, your team, and your cross-functional partners. This isn't rocket science, but it is discipline. And discipline is what separates CSMs who survive from the CSMs who thrive. Now, if you want help actually doing this work, head over to clearpathcx.com and grab the companion download for this episode. In that, you're going to find a portfolio prioritization worksheet that's going to help you tier out your accounts. You'll also have a 30, 60, 90-day planning template, so you're not starting from scratch. And that manager update email template that I mentioned earlier, that's also in there. All of it's designed to save you time and give you structure when you need it most. Now, in our next episode, we're going to talk about red flags in more detail, specifically how to spot risk before it spreads, because the best CSMs don't react to problems. They see them coming and they act before it's too late. So until then, head to clearpathcx.com, grab those portfolio templates and planning worksheets. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/Mark Bernardin, and follow the show so you don't miss what's next. And if this episode helped you get some clarity on your portfolio, send me a message. I read every one. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work. And thank you for being the kind of CSM who gives a damn. I'll talk to you soon.